and after around 2 or 3 weeks, I'd written several of the sessions and had taken it to my clientele, stayed in contact with them, and were able to help them get through those initial stages and still keep involved with tennis. I designed the program so it could be done in around 15 feet of space or less. I designed it so as I could do it through Zoom. And I had several of my students that took the whole 8 courses, or 8 sessions. And I think that they actually improved their game. The idea of designing the program was to give those folks some stability, some recognition of familiarity, and I gave them many tools to be able to get through that crisis, both psychologically and physically. And I'll go through each of the programs, each of the sessions, and give you a brief outline of what they're about. And I designed them specifically so as they would run, so they would be most beneficial to people. For instance, the first session, which was a schedule, making up your schedule, working on the concept of visualization and meditation. I gave meditation tools, an app called Calm, which was terrific in working them through meditation, and goal setting. Goal setting is huge. So that was a very big session for everyone to get familiar with the program. The second session dealt with aerobics. Now, understand that I knew what these people played like, so I had an inroad. I did change the program somewhat later, so as I could do groups with it, and also pros. I could use it with someone new that I didn't know, just by asking pertinent questions at the right time. So it's a very versatile program. It was designed to help people through that crisis, and as we all see, that we may be on the brink of that crisis again. So it's all around us. The second session, which was aerobic tennis training through visualization, describes itself. The third one was a tennis-specific conditioning program done in around 15 feet of space. Fourth one was a nutrition program, going through nutrition and how you should be using nutrition also as a stress relief. So yes, Foster's beer was good. Joking. The fifth one was a discussion of the geometry of the court and the tactics that should be or could be employed given the geometry of the court. Sixth one is the one we'll be doing with today, doubles versus singles, different strokes with different tactics. Seventh one is your place in the tennis universe, and that was a description of all the different acronyms we have in tennis, starting from the WTA and ATP and working my way down to Metro Tennis, so going from top to bottom and all the different variables involved, and a description of each. And then the eighth one was evaluating the program and having my students actually teach me for 10 minutes on what they found was most interesting. Best way for someone to retain learning is to try and teach someone else. So I found that fascinating. And then designing next steps, finding out the topics that people wanted to explore. I'm going to put on my shared screen. Okay, so this just briefly goes over what I've just explained so you can see it. I did put the program together with the concept that people should be trying to take care of what is under their control. And that's a favorite tennis theme of mine. Do what you can do, and if you do that, then you've done all you can do. Take control of what's under your control. The sessions that I gave lasted around, they were 8 weeks, and I did one session per week and a video Zoom call, which I did about 40 minutes on the Zoom. And I'd give homework, and I'd revisit at the end of the week to see how they were doing with the homework, if they had any questions. Then later did some group instruction, and that was fun. Had some levity to it. Oh, levity is part of this. I'm trying to get people back to reality. And when I do this presentation, you can see that I am dressed in my tennis outfit on top, just like any person going to work. And of course, I have my chef pants on underneath, down below, that you can't see because I enjoy cooking. So we'd share recipes too. So a bit of levity never hurts, especially when you're trying to get through a difficult period. So that's where the program started. So this is a description of session 6. And you have to understand that there was a progression getting to this. So session 5 was an understanding of the geometry of the court and different tactics that can be employed with it. Then I went into, on session 6, the difference between doubles and singles, different strokes, different tactics, and it was directly related to session 5's dealing with the geometry of the court. So we revised the court geometry as a first, and then we did singles, strokes, and tactics. And this is my philosophy. I haven't taken it from anywhere. I created it. You may have a different philosophy, and you may espouse it. This is what I teach. I teach that in singles, got to get something. The strokes and the rationale. The serve. There's 3 parts to a point: the serve and the return of serve, the neutral rallying stage, and then finishing the point with approach shot volley routines. That may not necessarily always go that way, of course. But if I were to construct a perfect point, that would be the way I would be playing singles. And that's basically based on the geometry of the court. And I've got to tell you that when I was playing, I was a serve and volleyer with a continental grip. So I've had to change my teaching philosophy, not what I was taught and what I did, but what is standard procedure now, or what is perceived for standard procedure now. And the game will change every 10 years, it always does. So teach a slice backhand because it's going to come back as a weapon soon. The serve placements and spins and concepts of whether you're serving well by the amount of percentage points you're winning off your first serve, second serve placement and spins, and what would the next shot expectation be. The neutral rallying stage, where I've divided the court into different zones, and I go through each of the zones, why you would hit cross court from a deep ball, why would you hit, when you would hit down the line, how you can construct a point, and I'll show you this later with the lesson plan, how you can hit or construct a game plan and practice an inside-out forehand to get to a person's backhand. And then understanding how you can vary that game plan. For instance, when, Borg and McEnroe was a pretty good example. When Borg was playing, he'd hit down the center of the court and hit a couple of feet behind the service line with heavy topspin and beat up on everyone because he didn't beat himself. And then McEnroe came along and used slice and took balls out of the air, and voila, McEnroe versus Borg. McEnroe usually turned out to be the winner towards the end. And then the geometry of approach shot volley routines, placement of the approach shot and use of the spins. For instance, the slice approach shot to make it stay low, to make your opponent hit up to you. Placement down the line, so you favor the side you've hit the shot down the line, and then you centered yourself in the middle of angles then you can get yourself in closer to the net. So they're all basic theories on singles, which I went through with my students. Jason, we're going to stop for a quick pause, and if there's any questions, if there are, please let me know, and I'll answer them, and then we'll go on to the next one.
Taking a look here, Bob. I don't see any yet, but I will interject if I do see one. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Then I tried to compare that game plan, that singles game plan, to a doubles game plan, where the points should be much shorter, and that's based on geometry, by the way, and the placement of the serves and why, and where you follow the ball and how you move with your partner, the rationale of the server coming in, the rationale of the receiver taking second serves up on top of the rise and coming forward themselves, trying to teach the strokes to do that. For instance, if you're trying to teach good doubles, you don't let the ball drop way down in your lower part of your strike zone and throw yourself way off the court, because that stops you from being the aggressor. Taking balls in the high part of your strike zone gets you closer in on the baseline and allows you many more opportunities to go forward. So it's a different stroke for a different game. Playing doubles and playing singles is like playing chess and dominoes. They're totally different. The neutral rally stage, that should be as short as possible, trying to cut off the court by getting to the net on the first opportunity, not the 23rd. And court coverage on how to use angles, when to use angles, when to change your pace. And then the approach on volley routines on where you place your approaches, where you place your volleys, which are different, almost reversed in doubles to what they are in singles. And from each of the different positions where you've got two players up, they are geometrically sound. If one volleyer is hitting through the center and having the ball move away from both players, and the other player that is facing the person that's already up at net turns and goes down the line on that person. You attack the person closest to you with the high ball because they've got least amount of reaction time. Saying hit them, but you place the ball there. So there's my rationale on doubles, and that's how I would I'd go through it in much more detail with them, but that's the rationale. Any questions, Jason?
None so far.
Okay, good. Designing a game plan, getting into more competitive play here of, okay, how do you evaluate what your opponent's strengths and weaknesses are? And there are many, many different strengths and weaknesses. For instance, everyone's going to say my forehand, my backhand, but it could be movement, it could be balance, it could be that I don't move forward well, it could be grips. For instance, if someone was playing me, they would use their heavy topspin and bounce the ball out of my strike zone up high, and I'd be an endangered species with my continental grip. However, I've got a strong enough wrist to be able to resolve that problem. Your balance, your focus, your speed around the net, what you do in between points, your mental attitude, these are all things that could be considered strengths and weaknesses, and you try to identify them. Then you design a game plan that will match up your strengths to your opponent's weaknesses. And I did a lesson plan, a singles lesson plan that I'll show you later, that does just that. I teach the skills, and then I teach the skills with the strategy already in mind, so as they know what they're trying to work towards. The placements of the different serves, the placements, the design of the game plan during the warm-up, what you're doing in the warm-up, to test strengths and weaknesses, seeing what the serve is like, taking serves and taking returns of serves, and basically evaluating and matching up your strengths. Then when you get into the match, you're evaluating, give yourself 4 games to test that game plan out. Evaluate your success and what's working, what's not working. 4 games after 4 games. If you break out at 2-0, you're doing okay. When do you change your losing tactic? You're down 5-0, you better start changing something drastically. If it's 4-0, just concentrate harder. May change one slight thing. I'm going to place another serve out wide. You just need to pick up a point to be the winner. Lost the first set, then you lost it in a close match, then make some small changes. You lost it by a large, then you need to make some considerable changes. I remember playing one doubles match, and we'd won the first set like 6-1, and both players went back to the baseline and started to lob, and it was a windy day, and that was a very successful tactic. So it did go to 3 sets. We squeaked it out in the tiebreaker, but we had to play a lot more conservatively. But they had changed their game to adjust for the conditions and for the game plan they had that wasn't working. So there are all sorts of options there. And then teaching someone about playing in the here and now. Hugely important. What goes on in between the points, what goes on before you start the rally, understanding what your rituals are, doubling up on your rituals if you're in a tight situation. Visualization, which is a huge tool, powerful tool, and breathing, which gets you into a relaxation state that you can perform to your highest ability. But you've got 20 seconds between points. Use them. Go through a 16-second cure. Jim Lair would be all over that one. Then we talk about periodization training. Periodization training is a tool that I believe in. I've trained just a ton of players who've gone on to play college and play professionally. And I'm a firm believer in periodization training. What basically periodization training is learning how to peak your performance when you want to perform highest. So the concept of active rest after you've just come off a tournament circuit series, working on things like, okay, get my fitness level up. Preparation stage, my backhand slice was weak. I wasn't getting any depth on it. Okay, so you go out and you work on things that you need to develop before you go out on the road again. The pre-competition phase, you start playing much more point-based situations, trying to put into tactics what you want to do and how to fight against other tactics. And then the competition phase, where you're out and you're competing and trying to understand what you have to do while you're out competing. You can usually compete for 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks before you've got to pull back. You can maintain that peak performance for around 3 weeks. So that becomes very interesting when you get good juniors and tournament playing adults, and you get into that stage. It becomes very interesting. Training for a tournament. See above here. And then I taught. My program was based on a lot of league players, so I would go through a concept of what they do to play a league match. And okay, so you don't just go out and think you're going to play really well. You can go out and prepare for it. What you do the day before, how heavy a workout do you do? Have you hydrated your system? What type of food do you get? Sleep. Scouting, have you got a game plan from scouting your opponents? Practice taking care of what's under your control. The day of, food and fluid intake and warm up. Warm up is huge. Getting your comfort level. Pre-match, what you do before you start a match. You get in there and stretch. I have students at present that we've designed music courses for. Music, I've got a couple of kids that are totally different. One has got very low arousal, so he likes heavy metal to get him going. And another one, super hyper, so Beethoven's very good. So I get them to stretch and be off by themselves and listen to the music that appropriately fits their mood. And get them focused on the job at hand. not talking to everyone else and getting worried about what they're going to do. And then the match, playing in the here and now, taking in information and handling emotions. Tennis is, it's a game where you've got to understand that you have to handle mistakes. You have to understand how to handle mistakes. They happen all the time. So trying to peak your performance and stay in the moment without getting angry, or if you're a hothead, then learn to clear it quickly. Don't start playing the point until you've cleared it. So you're playing each point individually. And then post-match, and this is always a tough one for a coach, because the kids will never call you when they've lost the match, and they'll always call you when they won a match, but you usually learn more when you've lost the match. So having a post-match evaluation, even as a league player, is very worthwhile. What I need to work on to beat this team next time, what were my strengths, what were my weaknesses, what's my game plan going forward? Hugely important. So that was basically a thumbnail sketch of session 6. There's a lot in there. You can tailor it to a group. You can tailor it to an individual, knowing what the individual does, what they don't do. And I found it most helpful with a lot of students, because many of them play, especially in the older group, play doubles, but don't fully understand the geometry of singles at all. And every once in a while you get the junior that plays singles a lot and has no clue about doubles. So there was an interesting conversation with some of those juniors. Okay, Jason, any questions on all of that?
Yes, Bob, we have one question here. How do you plan periodization training when you have a huge group of players in one batch, as it becomes difficult sometimes to plan individually when you have 20 to 30 players of one level?
I would do that on an individual basis, and I take the time to do it. I was able to do it with 4 players that I actually said, okay, we're going to set a goal of playing in the women's senior national championships, and that they were 4-0 players, 3-5, 4-0 players, some of them in the 60s, some in the 70s. But we set that goal, and then we started working towards it. 20 to 30 players. If you're any sort of coach, you're going to take the time and spend a bit of individual time with each kid, or break it down into enough situation where you've got assistant pros working with them that know them. So there's no excuse for not planning for each student. Any others?
That's it for now.
Okay. All right. There we go. So this is a lesson plan I put together to try and show you the concept of social distancing on the tennis court and how I structure my lessons. Now, this is a private lesson. This is on court. I know we recently got back on court, but we've got to stay with the social distancing concept. It's fairly easy with a singles lesson, but the way I teach is I'll teach to a theme. So I've got a student, I actually did this with a student several weeks ago, about trying to teach them how to identify a weakness, and we identified the weakness as a person doesn't move well. So I put in, okay, so we're going to learn the tactic of slicing a serve wide on the deuce side. And when they reply into 3 different quarters of the court, you're going to work on your footwork, get around and play your strength out to the court that you've just opened up. So basically the way it would work is that you'd serve wide, they'd return more down the center, and you'd move around with your footwork and practice an inside-out forehand. So the structure of the lesson was such that I would do the warm-up drills, and I usually warm up with volleys. Sometimes I warm up with mini tennis, but in this case I warmed up with mini tennis, and I concentrated on the footwork. So I hit down the center of the court, mini tennis wise, and I have them working on backpedaling to play their inside-out forehand out to my backhand. That's in the warm-up, just to understand the footwork and the control and the balance. Baseline drills, I warm up with the cross courts and depth, and then I warm up with where I'm hitting down the center, and they're working on moving around and playing that inside-out forehand, but from the baseline, they're playing it out to my backhand side. And then I'd work on the serve and not introduce, and they would have some idea of slice, but I could try and give them targets to aim towards, showing how the serve doesn't have to go 120 miles an hour. In fact, if you watch a speed gun at any pro match and you're watching a guy serving, it's going to go through 25% less power because the energy is going into the spin. And what the spin does is it moves the player off the court an extra couple of steps if used correctly. So I teach the slice serve, and then I do point situations where I am returning the serve, and I know where it's going most of the time. So returning the serve, and I'm returning in different positions, and they're practicing their footwork to play their inside-out forehand out to my backhand side. Then we end up playing out points with the same concept. So that's a basic lesson plan. The only time that I would be near the student would be when they're working on serve with the slice, and that's when I would be wearing a mask. The rest of the time it's pretty active. Any questions?
We're good for now.
Okay. And I did a lesson plan for doubles, and trying to understand the placement of the volleys. So if you look at my teaching points, the selection, including depth of ball and taking balls in the higher part of your strike zone, shortening distances between you and your opponent, giving them less time to react. Shot placement and control, approach shot selection, change of pace, volley and overhead placement and purpose, and serve and return purpose and goal. Now this is a group lesson with 3 to 4 students in it. It's totally socially distanced. It goes for 2 hours. It's a very successful format. I go through the warm-ups, and the warm-up, I usually volley straight up and down the court. I don't volley cross-court in that scenario because it's too dangerous. People get hit. Straight up and down the court, teaching control, teaching contact point, get in focused, get in watching the ball. They're working with each other to keep it in play. And we do mini tennis, and we can go cross court on that, but I tell them not to go forward. Otherwise, someone will get hit. That's not what you're after. And then we'll do baseline drives, cross courts, working on angle to angle, depth to depth. And we go cross courts, and there'll be 2 balls going at once on all those drills. Then another 2-ball drill where you're going straight up and down the line, 2 people on the service line, 2 people on the baseline, and you're teaching their change of pace to get balls down at the person's feet, lobs to go over them so they can practice their placement of their volleys and control their volleys and work on their overheads as well. At points played on half a court, 2 balls at once, it's fairly safe. You tell them not to try and pass through the center. Then we go into point situations where we'll have 1 ball going and I'll be the feeder. There'll be 2 people on the service line, 2 people back on, 1 up and 1 back on my side where I'm feeding from. I'll start the feed with different types of feeds. And quite often I'll stand behind the person that is deep, and I'll move from side to side feeding the ball, making the players at the net follow me. So if I move out on the deuce side and they move out way past the doubles line, I expect that net player on the other side to move with me. So we're practicing the geometry, or covering the geometry, and centering ourselves in the middle of the angles that are possible to be produced. I also teach a lot of moving diagonally to cover the cross-court passing shot. So if you're a volleyer, you move on a diagonal. You don't move laterally, you move diagonally to cut off the angle. And we'll play out point situations where I'll emphasize where the placement of the shot should go. I alluded before to high volley. If you're the person at net and the person has come in to parallel you from their return of serve, then your placement is more through the center many more times on that high ball because it's running in between both players and running away from both of them. Whereas the person that has served and has come in, so the person in this case that would be on the deuce side, if they get a high ball, they can turn and go down the line and attack the person closest to them because they've got least amount of reaction time. You can hit your best volley back cross court, and all that's going to happen is you're going to get lobbed. And if you're not close enough to the net and you try and do a short angled shot with touch, you better be really good at that because they can run that one down and then you're at their mercy. So just teaching tactics through that point situation. Then I go into a serve and return of serve routine where I'll just do a serve and just do a return of serve. So there's no play in this except you're practicing the skills of moving onto a first serve and shortening your backswing as your returner, or taking a second serve up on top of the rise and driving it deep and visualizing yourself going forward. And first server placement of your serves, trying to use your different spins to get different placements. And second serves, trying to get your opponent's weaker side or out of their strike zone so they can't attack you. After we've warmed up our serves and our returns of serves, then I'll get them to play out a point at a time. So the deuce side will play a point on the deuce side. As soon as they finish the ad side, serve will serve and play out a point on the ad side. Whenever you've got whenever you've got points going cross court, you don't want to play two balls at once. Not when they're coming to the net. It's too dangerous. Then we'll finish off with points, playing out match play points, and I always give a summary of the lesson and homework. I always give homework. I'm an old teacher. So that's a double strategy lesson described for you. And there is, that's total social distancing. There is no contact. So it's something that fits in to today's needs. Okay, any questions?
I think you're good for now.
Very quiet group. Okay. Well, that's my presentation of session 6 and the 2 strategy lessons that would go along with it once you get back on the court. The program, as I said, is designed for social distancing. A lot of it can be done at home or through Zoom calls. I did the progression. The very first session of scheduling and meditation, visualization, and goal setting. They're things that you need to do with all your students. I do it with my groups. I do it with my privates. I've got about 55 private customers. I do it with every one of them, and I revisit it. That's important. Goals change. You need to do that. You need to know your students. They need to know what they're aiming towards. The second session was working on strengths and weaknesses of your student. That's where you're doing some exercises using visualization. I had fun with that one because I was in a mad cooking stage and I was cooking rutabagas and using rutabagas to show the path of the swing to get to your target. That was fun, visualization. And then the third one was tennis-specific aerobic and anaerobic training, and these are things that people could do on an ongoing basis. In fact, I wanted them to do a week of 3 days of aerobic and then 3 days of anaerobic training with a day of rest. And many of them did it, and their conditioning picked way up. It's really amazing. And that's something that they could take into the rest of their lives. Just like the meditation is something that they were able to take into the rest of their lifestyle. So it was a pretty interesting program that is now ongoing for many, many of my students. Uh, so that's my presentation. I hope you got something out of it. It's something. I find that it is unique because it's versatile enough to be individualized to students. It's versatile enough to be able to be run in groups, done in groups, and I think that if you give it a shot, you'll have a lot of success. And you start tailoring topics based on what your students need. So there you go. Any questions?
Bob, I'm going to give folks a minute to type in any other questions that they have. I just want folks to understand that this system is a fantastic opportunity for you to connect with the pros and for the pros to connect with you and really come up with a off-court game plan, all-around game plan, all-inclusive game plan for each of their players. You know, you go in depth here talking about all of the strategy and the singles and doubles tactics, but I just want folks to really understand that this is to help the pros help their students. This is stuff in addition to just being on the court with them. With that, Bob, I want to thank you for sharing the system with us. I hope it's insightful for our viewers as it has been for me. And to purchase the total course, including a 30-minute Zoom call with Bob to go over any questions, is $200 to Bob's Venmo account, which will be included in the follow-up email along with his direct email to reach out to him. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds or so if you have any follow-up questions. But I do want to thank everyone for taking the time to sit into this presentation. Hopefully everyone's going to stay safe, and hopefully we'll get tennis in all of the regions up and running. I know here in Western, where tennis is booming around here, and I just hope in all of your areas it is as well. But I don't see any questions at the moment, Bob. Is there anything else you want to end with, Bob?
Yeah, that must have been very specific. I would have thought there'd be thousands of questions. Okay, well, look, I'm available for any comments, questions. You'll have my email. The program is versatile. It is unique. I see all sorts of tennis teaching that's trying to go live and it's go virtual rather, and it's okay. Here's how Pete Sampras served, and you watch videos of Pete Sampras serving. It's not tailored. None of the stuff that I've seen has been tailored to individual students and to present situations. For instance, all of this stuff that I've talked about in the 8 sessions can be done in that 15-foot of space at home. If you don't have 15, you can do 10. And it can be designed to be as aggressive or as leisurely as you like, just by changing the ratio of repetitions that you do in the aerobic versus anaerobic exercise. That's a pretty good example. So it is versatile. It's something that you can take and run with and adjust to your particular needs. And I wish you all the very best, whether you take it or not. I hope that we get through this pandemic and tennis gets right back where it should be. #1 sport in the world.
And we have one question here, and I do want to address it. So when you do purchase the package from Bob, you will schedule the times with Bob to meet with him one-on-one. It's not going to be another webinar. Everything from here on out is a one-on-one with Bob, and like he said, it will be tailored to you, the coach, to help your specific students. So everybody, thank you very much. And I will send out a follow-up email so that you can get in touch with Bob. And again, I hope you guys find this as useful as we have. Thank you, Bob.
Hey, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Jason.
All right.
Bye-bye.